Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the Mr. Fix-It channel. Got the Polaris 400 in the shop again today, and we're going to talk about why it won't shut off. Stay tuned.
I was sitting out there in the shed one evening, not doing too much of nothing, just kind of staring at the wall. And
Now this may be the first time this has happened to you, or this has been an ongoing issue, or has been an intermittent issue. And what I'm talking about is you turn the key off, the engine still runs. You turn the handlebar switch off and the engine still runs, and the only way you can get to shut off is to pull the choke out and choke it to death. Now this information is going to be relevant to all of your Polaris ATVs from the mid 80s all the way into the late 90s, 98, 99. And it's also going to be relevant to the Sportsman, the Magnum, the Trail Boss, the Trailblazer, the Sport, the 400L, which this is a Sportsman. All of these machines are all basically the same thing with different trim outs. They got like different speedometers. Only a few things were changed, like there's a couple of different ignition system designs, there's a couple of different charging stator designs, and there's a couple of different circuit board designs. And other than that, these are all basically the same machine. The 2 strokes, the 4 strokes, all use the same wiring colors, the same basic principles. So this is going to apply to a bunch of these old Polaris ATVs. So obviously, if you turn your key off and it doesn't shut off, but you can use the thumb switch and it will shut off, it's probably your key. And vice versa. If this won't shut it off, but that will shut it off, then it's probably this switch. Specifically what I'm talking about here is if neither one of these switches will shut the engine off, it's highly unlikely that both these switches went bad at the same time. Now it is possible that you just acquired your machine and you don't know anything about it, that one switch had went bad, you didn't know that it went bad, and then later on the other switch had went bad. So I'm going to walk you through all the steps how to troubleshoot to see if it's one of these switches, or if it's something else in the wiring, or if it's the CDI box itself, because the CDI box plays a role in shutting this thing off. And what I mean by that is the CDI box has to ground out. So when you flip these switches, you're creating a path to ground for the CDI box to kill the spark. You're not actually stopping the power to the ignition coil. You're actually grounding out the CDI box. This engine will run completely independent from any of the wiring on this machine. All you need is the stator, the wiring, and the CDI box and the ignition coil to make this engine run. Nothing else has to be connected. But to shut it off, you need these switches and the corresponding wiring to shut the machine down. Alright, so to get in here, we got to take this red plastic off. We don't have to take this top panel with the headlight out, but we do have to take the 2 side panels and this big red cowl and the seat off to get into that wiring. Hopefully by now you guys know how to take all this off. It's pretty simple. There's a latch, seat comes off, there's a screw there, there's a screw there, there's a screw there, and a screw on the other side, the same place. This piece is kind of locked in with a tab. You got to take the front cover off, turn that screw a 1/4 turn, pop that off, unlock these. This all slides off. Pretty simple. Okay, once you got these covers removed, right over here on the left side of the machine, you're going to see this wad of spaghetti. Now this wad of spaghetti is where all the connections are made. Well, not all of them, but most of the connections are made in this machine. And what's behind here is this panel here. Now I'll post this up on the screen so you can actually see this better. But what you're looking at here is the connection panel. Now these are all divided up in groups. Black, yellow, red, white, white, green, white, red, and so on. And these correspond to the wire colors that are in the machine. Now, the kill switch wires are black, and that's up here on this upper left-hand corner. Now, you got one coming from the CDI box, and your CDI box is this black box right here. And it's kind of hard to see because of all the spaghetti in the way, but that's it right there. And if you see on the side of it here, you got all these wires coming out. You have a brown wire, which is all the brown wires in this is ground, and then you have a black wire which is right there, this wire right here. Now when you flip either the key or this, what you're basically doing is you're connecting the brown to black. If the switches aren't turning off the machine, what you're going to want to look for is this black wire coming from the CDI box, and make sure that this connection in this panel is clean and has contact, and that it's actually stuck in there. Now, if you ever have to pull some of these wires off, putting them back in, sometimes it can be tricky because it's such a tight area, and you can see how it has this rubber around the outside. You could actually get it between the connector and the rubber, and you might think it's plugged in, but it's not actually plugged in. So in order to make sure that you have this plugged in, it'll feel solid. Like if you go to plug this thing in, you can see how difficult getting that plugged in there. It'll feel kind of loose if you don't get it right. It should feel kind of snug in there. Needle nose pliers helps, but you got to kind of fish through this stuff. Now the brown wire coming off of this CDI box goes up to a screw that actually attaches the CDI box to the frame. So you can see right here, and there's a Torx head screw right there. You want to make sure that's connected. I'm pretty sure if that wasn't connected, you wouldn't have spark, but just check that too, you know. And also the brown wires down here. So this kill switch, there's a brown wire that runs into this kill switch and a black wire that comes out of it. So if the brown wire isn't connected to this kill switch, this isn't going to work. Alright, here's a wiring diagram. I'll also put this up on the screen so you can see it better. This does not show the actual connector panel in this diagram. Now the manual I have covers multiple years and multiple machines. I do have a wiring diagram that shows the circuit panel in this diagram, and I'll also put that up on the screen so you can take a look. It's not for this machine, but it's very similar to this machine, and it'll kind of give you an idea how everything's connected. So what we're working on here is right in this area. You can see this is the key switch. You have the wires coming in that run the lights, the fan, everything else to turn that power on and off. That's that upper switch here. The lower switch is these two contacts here. You can see there's a brown wire. It goes to ground and it comes in. This is in the off position, so it's making contact with this black wire. Now down here, this is the kill switch or the thumb switch. You can also see the brown wire comes in and makes contact when this switch is closed, and it also connects to the black wire. Now this black wire runs all the way over here to the CDI unit. This is what kills the spark. Now this isn't really relevant to this topic, but I just want to show you that this white wire with a blue stripe, that runs down to the ignition coil. So if this wire isn't connected, you wouldn't have the spark, it wouldn't run. Alright, now to determine if the switches are actually functioning, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my volt ohm meter, I'm going to set it to ohms, and I'm going to connect one of the meter leads to where the black wire goes to the CDI box. So I'm going to unplug that black wire, and I'm going to I'm going to use my alligator clip jumper wires connected to my meter to connect to this panel. I'm going to take one side, doesn't matter which. I'm just going to use the red side. I'm going to connect it where that black wire goes, and I'm going to take the other lead and I'm going to connect it to the battery negative. That's a good source of a negative. You can connect it to the frame or somewhere like that, but you may not get a good reading. You want to make sure that this is giving you an accurate measurement. So I'm going to set this to ohms. I'm going to turn on the beep function, so whenever I get continuity through these wires, it'll beep. So I'll go ahead and test my meter, make sure this is working. I'm going to connect this end to the battery negative. Now to confirm that I have a good connection to the battery, I'm going to pick a spot on the frame here and see if I have continuity to ground. I'm going to go on this bolt right here. Okay, so I know that end is connected and it has a good connection. Now I'm going to take this black wire, got to make sure you get the one going to the actual CDI box. So I'm going to unplug the one that goes to the CDI. I'm going to take this clip and plug it in to where that just unplugged from. Okay, now you can see I have a signal, a continuity. I have both switches off. Okay, now I got both switches on. Now I'm going to turn the kill switch off. You see I have continuity. It's not a full ground there, but it is giving me a reading. Now I'm going to turn the key switch off. Now that gives me a dead short to ground. So this tells me that both the switches are working. Now if you're in this position where both these switches are actually working and the machine doesn't shut off, more than likely it's the CDI box that's bad. But you want to make sure you check the brown wires, the ground wires going into this circuit panel. So I'm going to take my jumper off of my lead here. I'm going to fish my way in here to where the brown wires are, and I'm just going to touch this to brown, and I should get continuity to ground. So now I know that the grounding portion of this circuit board is grounded. So if one switch fails to show a connection to ground, then that switch is bad. You might take the switch apart and clean the contacts, or fish the wiring from this. Make sure that the brown wire and black wire for this switch is actually connected. And you can actually pull the wires and check the switch, isolate it and check the switches independently from each other. But you always have a brown wire going into a switch, coming out of a black wire going up here to this black section. You also want to check these other black wires, make sure they're plugged in secure, and make sure they're clean. Because if these are loose or dirty, then your kill switch is not going to work. And this connection panel does get a lot of dirt in it, especially if you ride in the mud a lot, or you're in the dust a lot. So just pull these out, make sure they're clean, wiggle them around, make sure they're tightly connected. You can take a pair of pliers and slightly bend the tangs on these to make them tighter. So when you bend these, just bend them just slightly, because if you bend them closed, you'll never get it plugged back in. So just give them just a little squeeze, and then plug it back in and see if it's any tighter or not. And again, like I said, a needle nose pair of pliers will help you connect these in. These are hard to connect. You'll struggle with this. You might think you have it connected, but it may not be. This is generally the problem right here. These wires aren't connected correctly. It's like this one, I'm having a lot of trouble getting it connected. Okay, another way to confirm that it is actually the CDI box that's bad is I'm going to take this jumper wire and connect it into the black wire going into the CDI box. And I'm going to connect this end to ground, and that should stop the engine. So I'm going to start the engine. And when I connect this to ground, the engine should stop. If it doesn't work in this fashion, then the CDI box is bad, and go ahead and replace that guy. Hey, if you guys like this video, please give me a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and don't be afraid to fix it. Thanks for watching.